Okay, we are going to go live today in two places at once. So for those that have signed up for the Masterclass, you will see this in one window. And for those that are potentially on any of our social channels, this will also be live there. So every Wednesday and Friday at Aha Healing in our studios, we do Wednesdays about relationships and Fridays Masterclass is about finding faith. We tend to connect the two dots together because whether you are in a relationship or not, the same themes will show up. They just show up more profoundly, potentially, in your relationships. So for those that have never been here before, my name is Janice Taylor, and I'm the founder and CEO of Aha Healing, Inc. Aha Healing actually came from the word ahava and vice versa. When I was a kid, we had the Oprah show. And for those that maybe knew me in high school, I loved Oprah. In fact, I thought Oprah was just my teacher. And every book that she would talk about, I'd scramble to go buy the book. And I wanted to really understand myself. And Oprah really gave me the window into that. And so when she used to say, have your aha or healing or aha moment, I was like, what is that? Like, where does it come from? Can I get it in the Sears catalog, for example? Like, can I order it up? And what was most profound about it for me was I was like, well, what does it really mean to have an aha moment? I also thought at the time that she was saying ahava, which is the Hebrew word for to give love. And as I moved forward in my life, I came to understand more of my root history, came to understand my family ancestry roots. And as in my 30s, I was like, well, what does this word ahava really mean? And interesting enough, when I Googled the word, because they didn't have Google in the 80s when I was watching Oprah, it meant to give love. So the parts of ahava and this Aha Healing course was really to understand the concept of love. And where does love come from? Is it come from things outside of ourselves, the things we do? Or is it something that is within us? Is it our birthright? How do we experience this concept of unconditional love? And as I move forward in my life, this was just this nagging sensation. So in high school life, I was really trying to sort it out. And for those that maybe knew me in high school, knew that I wasn't known as this big dater or excellent at relationships, friends and otherwise. It was kind of a nightmare. And looking forward, when I started to do my psychology degree, I felt, well, if I just get married, then I suddenly won't be that girl anymore. I had all of this extraordinary self-loathing and quite a bit of attachment issues. My father was an addict and left when I was 6. So I had a lot of this, I want to say, jumbled up notions of relationships. I got married in university like many people did, quickly had 2 children, and then it all came crashing down. And so all of it seemed to be part and parcel of the same core root issue. And so when we talk about relationships, we really want to get to the heart of them. And so every week we discuss healing in relationship to your relationships, if it's love that you are seeking. And then on Fridays, we talk about finding faith. So today's masterclass, typically I do a deck. So we're going to make that deck available. Today, I decided just to talk to the camera and to talk to those that are signed up for the webinar and the masterclass and sign up for those that are seeing this live. So most of us really, if we're being honest with ourselves, really just want to be loved. We ultimately seek love. We want to know that we matter. We want to have our concept of our lives validated. And most of us enter relationships, I think, in a hopeful sense, hoping that this time, this will be the one. This will be the time that I will feel unconditionally loved. We seek it, and we constantly seek it in all kinds of forms. And as I was studying emotional pain when I went to do my degree, I still wanted to understand myself better and the path I'd gone on and the things I'd been exposed to. I started a journey of getting to the core root of emotional pain. And in particular, the wound that lives in all of us. We all have a wound, whether we want to acknowledge it, whether we've done so well in our head to block it out, cut it off, to have it not exist. to have it not be there. We all have a wound. And when you look at the numbers, it's quite startling. And when we think about a wound, sometimes we don't even acknowledge our wound because maybe the wound is too intense for you. Maybe you didn't think it was a big deal because your parents were still married, and so therefore you didn't have a wound, and that wound doesn't exist. But everyone that I've ever met over this, long, long life, everyone has an emotional pain point, a thorn, a wound, something that is alive in our bodies. Now, past the event, past your 10th birthday, you may not acknowledge that you have a wound. You may have forgotten about it. Maybe you don't think it's a big deal. Usually in our 20s, we're trying to fill that wound. We often go and get married. We seek relationships because we think this time things will be different. But the most important part of this week's masterclass is to talk about shedding. The last two masterclass, the first one was the calling in relationships. The second is our beliefs about relationships. And the third step in our relationship process here at AHA Healing is the shedding. Shedding really is tied to grief. If we look back to who we originally loved, we originally learned about love from those that brought us into the world, your parents, your family. That's who taught us what relationships and love was to look like. We learned it in a nature, in a nurturing environment. We witnessed chaos maybe and abuse. Maybe you witnessed divorce when you were a young age and you lost that parent. Maybe you were adopted and you had a loving family, but you still had a different birth family. There's a whole different slew of different reasons of how we first initially love. And when you think about it, when we were born, love was our birthright. We came into this world with the expectation that we would be loved. You can trace this in history. You can look at the Bible. You can look at science. You can look at early child development. And we now know that babies come into the world relational. They come ready for relationship. But something happens between our birth and our 10th birthday, where that wound comes in and that thorn comes in. Now, for some of you may know, my roots are psychology. I'm at Harvard in January to complete a master's thesis around this topic of human addiction. If you think about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it starts with your basic needs, food, water, shelter, all your physiological needs that you may have as a child. Right above that is love and belonging. So between your birth and your 10th birthday, you learn the roots of love and belonging. How do I love and belong here in this family I'm now born to? And somewhere between there, this wound enters it, and a thorn, and it's a pesky thorn, gets stuck in love and belonging. That disruption is very, very severe for many humans. Many people have it and they don't even know they do. But it is in charge of your life. It is in charge of everything. And when you think about relationships, when you were a child, you learned to change yourself. I know, I have this love and belonging. If I show up as the good girl, maybe I will get love and belonging. Maybe mom and dad will stop fighting. If I pretend that this doesn't bother me, if I don't show my feelings, if I don't do these things, then I can change how I feel. And if you think about that thorn that enters the body so intensely, it changes everything. Yet we don't even know that it's changed us. We don't even know that we're operating from emotional pain. So we continue in our life and we collect our cast of characters. Past your 10th birthday, you go into high school, you're probably looking for relationships, wanting to date. Some cases it's natural, in most cases it's very natural, but you also are trying to solve this emotional pain, but you don't know that you are. See, emotional pain past your 10th birthday gets buried in your subconscious. It gets buried there, and you think it's no longer present, that if you just date the right boy or the right girl, the past will no longer be true. I certainly thought that that would be true for me. But then it comes alive. And at first, it's like a drug. Oh my God, this person likes me. They come into your life. boom, there's all this dopamine hits. Now I have love and belonging, but like all good drugs, they wear off. It starts to actually slide. And if you think about it sliding, eventually then you start to pick at each other and this relationship doesn't work. And some people do destructive behaviors to get out of the relationship or to sabotage it, or you can't believe that it's this person loves you, so you sabotage it. There's a whole myriad of responses that we have to emotional pain. Not only just the bad feelings, but the good feelings too. That can also feel foreign to you. And if it's foreign to you, you can also reject it. And so deep in the psychology is this wounded child. And the wounded child can become the saboteur. The saboteur can sabotage so many relationships that could potentially be great for you, but you're so busy sabotaging them because it's an unfamiliar feeling. Someone wants to love you and you can still reject it because you're afraid, because of fear. And in a lot of cases, you don't even know why. So you can push it away or you can sabotage it. All of it, again, you have to trace back to the wound. All of these circumstances that happen in our lives, we can trace back to the wound. And then we can trace back to our codependent addictive self. Now, most of the world has such a misunderstanding of human addiction. In fact, nobody's even heard of it because I coined it. Human addiction is where we learn to change ourselves to get love. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter if you're in the workplace, we change or we manipulate in our psychology to either avoid being hurt again, so we'll change, or to manipulate to get love and belonging from other people, so we change. And all of that is actually becomes quite an addictive state. And that addictive state is causing 99% of the problems today. Social media, even where this is live stream, created much of the problems we have today. Much of the ability for us to even become addicted to technology has its roots in emotional pain. Every single thing we do in our world can trace back to that original wound. Everything. And I know people don't like to look at that. It's like, I'm no longer a child. That doesn't matter anymore. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And it does for a whole bunch of reasons. And we want to ignore it because we think our head, our logic is a superpower, and it is not. It is not. After studying emotional pain all these 30 years, what I came to the conclusion is that you cannot heal without an active relationship with your soul. You cannot heal without faith. You cannot heal without grieving the things you didn't get. And in some terrible circumstances, you didn't get a lot. And we have to mourn and we have to shed. And shedding is the process of where we look at every single person that you've ever loved, dating back to the first, mother, father, grandparent. You make that list, even people you may not even know. If you were adopted, for example, you may not know your birth family. And that disconnect, even if you had an amazing family, that disconnect can still exist. It can still be a break in the spirit. So then we have to look at all these people and say, what was the gift? And what do I forgive and say goodbye to? And you throw that fish back to sea and you call back the very piece that is stuck to them. So when we have loved and been loved or had our heart broken, every single person, we leave a piece of ourself with them. It's an inevitable part of the human exchange. It's the human cost of these relationships that we've had. We leave a piece of them stuck there, and the rest of the time we're still trying to fill that bucket that we have inside of ourselves that feels lost, broken, like something is missing. And that something is missing is part of your psychic wound. It's part of the gaping part of the wound. So each time a new event happens or a new break, we break a little bit more inside, and that thorn becomes an abscess. And then the abscess can become a full-blown cancer in our body. And we can start to have this whole fester that it just is a darkness that just starts to consume us. And until you heal that wound and pull that thorn out, you will continue to attract much of the same, sadly. So what do you do about all of this? What do you do about all of this now that you know? So if you are in a relationship right now, or you're seeking love, there's a high probability, if you haven't done this work, the two of you were attracted to each other because of pain. And at first it felt euphoric, like, oh, we found each other. My long lost love is now going to give me love. It's going to show me love. It's going to give me that longing that I have in my heart. And now here is this sad truth, and not to be a Debbie Downer on everyone's Cinderella white horse analogy, but no one can give you the love that you already have. You are already unconditionally loved and full. But when we expect someone to give us these things, show me, do for me, give me loyalty, give me all these things, we stay in our ego construct, which means we're in our head, which means we believe it's finite, which means that it will fall to pieces. It will fall to pieces. That drug will wear out. And if you are seeking relationship guidance and advice, chances are you're at that point. Now, if you are rejecting love, saying, I don't need to be with anybody, I don't want a relationship, chances are you're just afraid and you've had your heart broken, and you're probably lying to yourself. Because all of us at the bottom of all of this want to know that we are loved. That's just being honest. It's just being straight up honest with yourself. If you want love, then you must travel inward first. So whether you are in a relationship or dating, we must go inward. And there's a step to that. In fact, there's a whole process. I wrote it because I'm like, give me the map. When Oprah said, have an aha moment, I was like, great. How do I get one? Like, give me the map. Where is it in the catalog? So I wrote these 12 steps of this theory because I felt that people needed that. We needed to know what is the process to heal our emotional pain and our emotional root. What is that process? Step 1, you must know that you have a calling that is bigger than yourself. You must know that. And why I say you must know that, because what else is the point of your suffering? And if we think about Viktor Frankl, who talked about logos therapy, and some people are like, oh, I don't really believe that our suffering leads to our purpose. But I have not found another reason why any human being would ever suffer and be in emotional pain, unless it was the ingredients for something bigger than themselves. And that love could be bigger than yourself, that purpose, that calling, that career, that job, that child, whatever it is. I know that the ingredients of your emotional pain are here to serve something bigger than yourself. Step 2, what is your beliefs really about love and relationships? Some of you that may be watching this probably knew my mother, good old Marilyn. My mom is a sweet woman, but she fundamentally believes that all men are bastards. That's what she told me as a child. She told me that about my father. She said, all men are bastards. They can't be trusted. They're just all bastards. I have a really wonderful husband who loves my mother more than anything. And she still says that even to him. And so that's a belief structure. That's a belief. Because you've had your heart broken, whatever step of that way, you believe that that's true. And it's not true. Perhaps some of the beliefs have been like, there's just no good men. There's no good people. Everybody's gone. There's nobody in the universe left. You know, there's 8 billion people in the world. I'm pretty sure there's some good ones in there. I know I found one. And we have these beliefs because of what we learned, because of our wound. It's just a pattern. And we repeat and fulfill this self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you've not read that book, it's a great one. What we have is we have this constant self-fulfilling prophecy of these things that may or may not be true. And so we need to look at the core root of the block. Most of the time, we're just blocked. We have a belief about our life that's not true, but we believe it to be true. And we believe it to be true because of pain. And we believe it to be true because of our human addiction. Humans, by and large, really will let us down most of the time. They will. I had a friend once that said, Janice, you have too many expectations from friends. And she was absolutely right. She was absolutely right. Because the moment I surrendered all my expectations around human beings ever giving me anything, including a sense of love and belonging, I could fully enjoy humans. I could see them in their wonderful cast of characters. I could choose who I had in my life and who I didn't. I had choices. And it wasn't until I healed that core root of myself that I could also choose a partner that was best suited for me. And I was married once, and then I spent 9 years divorced before I ever got remarried again. And I spent that 9 years meeting other relationships, and some two beautiful souls in there taught me something more about what men were really like in a positive, beautiful way. And then I also learned that I needed to love me, just me, as I was, that I needed to be loved by my breath, and everything else I did was gravy. And when I could go through that belief structure and I could get through those blocks, underneath the blocks of that concrete lies the wound. So you have to break through the top of that, and then the wound is there. And then once we see the wound, we need to send empathy, love, compassion to the wound. We acknowledge the wound and we can heal the wound. And the shedding process at this step is such a critical step, because we can convince ourselves in our logic of so many things, but it's the feeling that is very different. Now, for me, the final thorn that was at the bottom of my pit from all my relationships, from the 30 years of dating life and married life and divorced life and kid life and all of that, at the bottom of that was the original person who broke my heart, which was my dad. Now, all of us have the original person, the original root. Now, in my case, I genuinely now know as a truth, I didn't always, that my dad did love me in the best possible way that he could, with all of his woundedness that was sitting on top of him. And all of that woundedness was sitting on him that prevented him from becoming the man and the dad that he ultimately wanted to be. But I know that I was loved. And towards the end of his life, I hadn't seen him much really after 11. When I was 11 years old, I decided that going to his place was not a good idea for me anymore. So that separation agreement went out the window, and I was able to have some quiet time at home, and I never had to go there again. But those 5-6 years in his house showed me a lot, taught me a lot, terrified me a lot, broke my heart a lot. And after that time period and going back to my mom's house and having that quiet and all these wonderful families that raised me in the neighborhood I grew up in, I started to see all kinds of relationships and families and how they operated and the jokes they told and the way that someone cooked dinner. I didn't have any of those experiences as a kid, but I had an opportunity to go to all these households. And so pretty much after my grandmother died, somewhere around my 20s, I never saw my father really ever again. He showed up once or twice throughout at different points of time, but I never had a relationship with him. And since he'd left at 6, I really didn't know him. And so my sister had asked me, and my nephew invited me to his wedding back where I'm from in Saskatchewan. So I went to the wedding, and I figured that I would see my dad there, having not seen him. My girls are now teenagers. I'm now remarried and happily married to the love of my life. And my girls don't really know him. So we go back to this wedding and we're going to see him. And it was really like a final moment for me, but I had done quite a bit of work ahead of time to be ready to actually see him again. He was clearly dying. He had dementia. He didn't quite know who I was at first until he had this sort of lucid moment. And he's like, "Jen, is that you?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's me." And he was sitting on a pillow, and he got to see my girls and talk to them. And he didn't quite understand who he was talking to, but nevertheless, the girls got to see him. Got to introduce him to my husband, and they shook hands. And my dad, we walked him to the hotel room afterwards, and he turned and he looked at me and he's like, "What was your favorite tape?" Now, the one time that my dad and I would go on a vacation together, one time he took me out here to British Columbia, and when he was driving, he had all these cassette tapes, and we would fight over who got to play what tape. And I told him that my favorite, of course, was Simon and Garfunkel, of the tapes that I remember that he had. And he's like, "I thought so." And that was it. And then about a couple months later, I got a package in the mail, and it was his cassette tapes. And inside the cassette tapes was a letter that said, "You were always loved." And in that moment, I believed it to be true. I knew that I was always loved, that I'd always been loved, regardless of what I'd seen or what I'd experienced. And There's no saying that, what I saw and what I experienced, no child should have, but I had survived it. And not only had survived it, I started to use it as information and as a study of human experience. And that study led to the development of AHA healing. So how could I ever be angry at a man who gave me this gift? And in that moment, I felt extraordinary love towards him. Just this feeling of like, I can send this fish back. It's no longer a predictive element of who I will become or who I will love, but it had to be shed. I had to mourn that I never did get the dad I wanted or the childhood I wished for, but I got a lot more of other things. But I first had to acknowledge in my little girl self, in that wound, in that thorn, I had to send love to it. I needed to heal it. I needed to grieve it, and I needed to shed it so that I could just feel this extraordinary love for the man that he never was. I could feel this sadness for him that when he died, shortly after I got those tapes, I knew that he had lived a life that he may or may not have chosen, he may or may not have wanted, but I know that his life mattered. And getting that and shedding that and bringing that into me was really that piece of that puzzle. So for you that is listening to this today, this step is about shedding. So I want you to make a list, just on a notepad, on your phone, in your notes, of every person you have ever loved. Even your crushing grade 3, any person you have ever loved, just mark it down. Just write it down, all the people. In each person, I want you to take a moment and just travel back to them, even if it's painful. Just for a moment, travel back to each person on that list and see what the gift was. What was the gift? Even in the darkest of moments with people that have done some dark, terrible things, we can extract a gift. Maybe it's your resiliency. Maybe it's your strength. Maybe it's your courage. There was a gift. You subtract the gift and you throw that fish back to sea. You put a name on a rock and you throw it into the water. You cast it into the river. You throw it into the sea. You put it into the river and you send them back to God. God's problem, not yours anymore. They're not yours. So you then ask for the peace back. And when you ask for the peace back, it goes like this. And each person, you do it for each one. Each one. And you don't stop until you feel. And you don't send the rock into the sea, into the river, to the lake, wherever you can. Just skip it down the street into a field, wherever you are. If you're not ready to put that name on that rock and send them back, hold on to it just for a minute. The next day, ask again, are you ready to send this person back to the sea? Just boom. Every single person I've ever loved, along the whole path, family and otherwise, I wrote their name on sea, off to the sea. Thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift. And it's interesting. It's kind of like the Matrix. If you imagine these pieces of yourself and the shedding with any relationship you've ever been, it's like flying, like, get out of my way, get out of my way. I got to get to my person. I got to get back to my host. You're the host. And you can just imagine this piece is like, and all the holes that you feel within yourself are just like this. They all get filled in, and you will not have leaky buckets. So that when you go to choose love again with your relationship, you don't expect them to give you something because you're already full, but you can enjoy them. You can love them. You can have parallel tracks with them. If someone's looking over in your lane, butt them out. Say, hey, you can't be driving your car and still be in my lane and looking over at my lane because then no one's driving your car. It's parallel tracks, two people in parallel existence driving beside each other. And at different times, you're passengers on each other's journey. But someone is not driving your car. You drive your own car. They drive theirs. And you go along in the world of parallel tracks. Now, if you'd really like to take this journey, you can head to our Facebook page. You can head to our website, ahahealing.online. We're having a new website that's launching very soon. We have an exciting community that is going to be open to you. for a very small period of time for you to start to take this course and learn the map. You have within yourself a treasure trove, like a reservoir of gold, all like a stream. It's all here. It's not in here, cannot be found in the head and the logic. It is in the soul. It is in the being, and it's a reservoir of gold. So anything that you desire in your life, you first must take the walk and the map, and you will land there. And then it's like a spring. It just will flow out of you. And all that broke your heart previously will cease to exist in a good way. You can love them and bless them and send them back to sea. We will see you on Friday, this week of Friday, for Finding Faith Friday. We are going to go live talking about love and acceptance. But this step 3, whether you are looking for relationships and love, or you are seeking something else, you must shed, which means there's a grief cycle. There are 5 stages of grief. You can check out all that material on our course and check out our website now. Have a wonderful day, and know that you are loved by your breath, and everything else you do is gravy. Bye for now.